Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
And we'd like to welcome you to Stress-Free Living today. Thank you so much for joining us. Ray Samich here, along with Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. Always better when I have the opportunity of spending some time with you and hearing your perspective on different topics that hopefully will make us a little less stressed in our lives. That's certainly one of the big problems, and that's why we called this show Stress-Free Living. We changed the name, originally Visions. I'm not sure if we have any of our listeners that were with us way back when. The show started out as the name of Visions, and it was a vision for a better world, a vision for a stress-free world. And then we kind of moved over to that title. Do you remember when we did that, Ratanjit?
Yes, I have a lot of recordings of those shows, and I often listen to it, and I wonder, gosh, who are these two crazy guys?
Yes, I often, when I listen to the same way, I say, gee, I don't even remember saying any of those things, and I sounded so much younger and better, but that's okay. That's another story for another day. Today, let's talk, Ratanjit, about COVID a little bit more, and I hope our audience doesn't feel like we are talking too much about COVID, but truly in our lifetime, in our generation, and perhaps in over multiple generations, there hasn't been anything that has affected humanity at this level in a very, very long time. And it's changed us physically, and it's changed us emotionally. It's affected the way we live. And it also has really changed some core things, I think, within us that cause us to think differently and a different perspective on life. And I think we'll find out in the months and years to come if these were temporary changes or really life-impacting, society-impacting changes. And the future will tell that out. But for right now, it seems like there really are some significant things that are different. So when you and I talked, there also seems to be a lot of things that didn't change.
Yes.
So it's pretty good. It's an interesting question. Did COVID change everything, or did it really not change the important things? So before we do this kind of a list, what do you think?
So from your perspective, Ray, what are the things you think we have changed? Because you are very good at this, and you are in the media and everywhere. So how do you think things are different?
Well, I wanted to, very often we don't have any preparation for this show, but this one I felt was important. So I did. I put a list of some important things that I thought were definitely changed. And one of them I know you'll appreciate is the word gratefulness, because you are such a believer in the core importance of gratefulness in our life. And I truly think we are more grateful today. I truly think that things that we took for granted and the ability to go anywhere, anytime, and see anybody anytime was taken away from us. And gratefulness for life itself. I mean, sometimes we go to bed and which you never think about going to bed, waking up in the morning, but I am sure that millions of people thought about that. Am I going to get up tomorrow morning, when we were at the height of concern for everybody's life and death? So I think that's number one. I think we have an awakened awareness now of the world around us. I think we were kind of oblivious to the world and just going through the motions every day, doing the same old, and not really thinking about anything around us. I think we are more creative today mentally. I think we are, open-minded to what we need to do, because plan A didn't work. So immediately I think we're creative with plan B and plan C and D, because we had to become more creative. We were forced to. And I think that led to a physical flexibility and adaptability. I think not only is it a mental approach, but I think physically we were willing to say, okay, even if I have to build this or change this, even if I have to totally, move the plans around from what was convenient, it's willing to do that. And I think there was a physical adaptability that we are much more willing to do and much more able to do. Learning things. I mean, people went back and they learned how to bake and they learned how to do crafts, and they physically are making changes in their lives. So that was my short list, although each one of those is pretty life-changing if you think about it. So those are the ways we changed.
But there is another awareness, whether we got there or no, what this made us realize how interdependent we are. How if something happens in one part of the world, we say, oh, it's not us, let them handle it. But now this thing it started with one person, and it spread to second and spread to third and spread to millions and spread around the whole world. So it suddenly made us realize that we are all interconnected. So we can't say, let me not protect this other person. He's not my relatives, or he's a stranger, or he's an enemy, or he's in a different country. So that is, I think, the most important awareness. If we did not get that awareness, then we missed the whole game. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think that coincided with the use of technology, the creativity of coming up with Zoom. I mean, Zoom existed before COVID, but very few people used anything like a Zoom platform. And suddenly we connected with people and we said, oh my gosh, like we do on this show. We have people on this show coming from India and from England and across the world. And we say, wow, these really are my brothers and sisters. I can talk with them and communicate with them. They're not off in this strange world. They're just like me. They just happen to live in a different place.
See, there is another side of us as human beings. Often we want to find why this happened. It's a bad thing happened, and who is responsible for it. And if it was not prevented, why was this not prevented? So you go into the blame game, excuse me, rather than being grateful. Then you are on a totally different journey. Then you begin to hate people, begin to become, you have division rather than unification. And in our human psyche, that is something first come to our mind. Who did that? Who is responsible for that? Let's find a victim and punish him and put him in jail.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and certainly that went on, and to some people to an extreme case. But I think most everybody is thinking a little bit about that. Where did it come from, and why did this happen? And especially if they lost a loved one through this, did that kind of, I guess I'll say negative thinking. I don't know if it really is, but certainly not positive thoughts, negative thoughts, blaming, maybe even hating certain cultures because of that, taking that strong word. But there were also some other things along those lines that happened over the last 18 months. And maybe it was coincidental, maybe it wasn't, but there were cultural and political differences that really were accentuated over the last 18 months too. Some of them provoked with some police issues, and some that just happened to coincidentally occur. And so I wonder, did COVID also cause us or allow us to be a little bit more negative, a little bit more skeptical of trusting people and accepting things that maybe aren't perfectly righteous and justice?
Well, it depends on, see, if your family member was attacked, or we lost a family member, or we ourselves went through a lot of suffering and all that. So there is a very negative feeling. There is a hurt feeling. We want to blame somebody. Look at how many Asians were attacked because of this COVID, because originally it came from China. So a lot of people attacked that. So there is no gratefulness there. There is no awareness of unification, of oneness there. So it depends on where you were. But again, Ray, all this reaction in us, how we take these reaction under different circumstances, really reflect where we were in life in terms of maturity or in terms of awareness of who we are. So until that's a litmus test of where you are in life, the way you react. So people who are grateful, they were a different place or different understanding of life because they could see that ultimately I still have so many things available to me. What if this thing is not there? And people who have lost things, even if they have lost their freedom to go out, they wanted to party, they wanted to go for a wedding, the wedding was canceled, or not too many people attended the wedding. So they are bitter. I say, my God, why this happened? I didn't do this. Why am I suffering from this? So again, it exposes who you are really. It brings you to a point of self-evaluation based on the reaction you have from this situation.
You know, you in a conversation that we had, a discussion we had many years ago, we were talking about politicians, and bear with me because this is an analogy I think that is relevant. We talked about, and I can't remember exactly the title of the show, but was do politicians become corrupt, or do politicians just have the opportunity to expose the corruption that's already within them? Okay, and we had a great discussion, I think, over a series of shows because, and the relevance here is that a lot of things did happen during COVID. Were these things that were already within us that were just escalated and heightened due to COVID, or did it create it? Did COVID actually plant these seeds for these different thoughts? And you just brought up a few of them. You know, the attacking of anything that's associated with the Chinese, the country of China and the people of China. There's definite negativity, even though the average citizen of China had nothing to do with this whatsoever. But for many Asian people, there was an immediate negativity that was looked at towards them. You know, was that bias always within us anyway, and this just escalated it, or did this cause it to happen? I mean, I never even thought about Asian people before this happened. You know, that was just not in my mind, except to say that there are people that live in Asia. But this brought it to the forefront, obviously. And there was physical violence that has occurred against the population. So what do you think of that? Is this an example of those things being within us already, and they were just brought to the surface?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying, that you have gathered informations, and again, we have talked about operating in the human body mode. When we are operating in the human body mode, the body is designed to take care of itself. So it is parked in fear, greed, and those conditions. So if you are in the human body mode, you are always going to see things in that particular form. When you are in the spiritual mode, because ultimately we are spiritual beings having a human experience, if that understanding comes in us, we have heard about that. And when we begin to think those things, our thought process changes dramatically. Under any different difficult conditions, we learn, because all difficulties, all challenges are very profound wisdom thrown at us. But if we take them as, no, I don't deserve it. I received that under the umbrella of my human body mode and look from fear, greed, and ego, then I'm going to react negatively. So fundamentally, each person can react positively or negatively. It's not anything wrong or right with a person. It depends on where they are part in their operating mode. If they are part in the human body mode, they are definitely going to react negatively. If they are part in the spiritual mode, then they are grateful. They understand that, my God, there are so many other things which could have happened, and so on. So that is fundamentally what happens.
That was beautifully explained. And it was also very, very much understandably explained the way you did it, saying that it's not bad or right or wrong or bad or good. It's just the way we are. But I also think there's another element, and I'm curious what you think, is that I think it isn't just a fundamental response. It isn't just a natural response based on our self-survival that we are instinctively given. I think we also tend to like it. I think we also tend, as human beings, we gravitate towards opportunities to say we're better than they are, or we like a good story. We like to gossip. We like to talk frivolously about who could be the reason why this happened and why this happened. I think we gravitate towards those kinds of thoughts and those kinds of discussions. So that isn't nice. That isn't a fundamentally survivalist approach. That is basically, to me, the bad part of our human nature, that we like that. Do you think that that's an element in there too? Do we look for opportunities to be critical of others? Do we like to find mysteries where we can blame people?
Well, see, in the ego mode, Ray, you feel higher than others by condemning others. You feel better by finding faults in others. So that forces you to look from that angle. So again, it is in the human body mode, you will do that. And in the worldly sense, we call it as a good thing or bad thing, but we never go deep enough to understand why is that happening. So it doesn't matter how well educated you are, how much intelligence you have, and how much word you have seen. And until you get out of the human body mode and think of spirituality means the divine power which is present in us is what makes me and what makes you. Under that mode, there is no ego. And under that mode, the direction is always mean to others. Giving, serving, and helping and loving comes automatically to you. But in the other mode of what is in it for me comes in. in the body mode. So you are always going to look for making yourself feel better by condemning others, criticizing others, and taking revenge of others, because we do not connect that every living being has the same enlivening force as I have. So every person, their happiness affects my happiness, their sorrow and their suffering affects my suffering and my sorrow. And that that realization only comes to us when we think in the spiritual mode, in the oneness mode.
This is Stress Free Living. We're talking today about what COVID changed and what COVID didn't. And interesting, we've had a list of things that it did change, and Ratanjit has talked for the last few minutes about some of the very basic understandings of who we are and how we were intended to be, how we're intended to act and live. And that part perhaps didn't change and maybe never will. We'll come back and talk much more about this and continue this discussion as well as taking it to the next level, that how do we really live our life then? If this is the reality, how should we be living our life? How can we be adding value post-COVID with maybe a greater awareness of who we are? This is Stress Free Living. We'll be right back in just a moment. All right. Anybody would like to comment? Please do. We'd love to hear from you in the next 2 minutes. Please.
Are we talking like a broken record, or are we saying something new? Johnny Saab?
So, I felt that you unfolded a number of layers, So usually what I've seen is that when we discuss COVID, we talk about social distancing, quarantining. So again, we look at the physical factors, right? So we don't go into the spiritual factors. So I really think that this mindset of oneness, I think, allowed you and all of us, thereby through you too, to dig deeper in less visible aspects. And I think that's the whole thing, that there are tangible physical aspects, but then there are deeper,
yes,
more human aspects, if I'm making any sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do. Thank you. I hope we're making a little sense, at least Ratanjit. I know I don't normally. Thank you, Doctor. Dylan, anything quickly? Darby, anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Darby, we got you with us here today?
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning.
Okay. And good morning. Any quick thought? We got 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, I just appreciate the spiritual comment. There are two young men. One is Jamil Davis. Ratanjit knows him, but he had a book signing. Okay.
There we go. Sorry. We are back on Stress Free Living. Once again, we'd like to share with you the opportunity for you to be part of the program by way of our Zoom calls. If you are interested in actually communicating with us during the breaks and seeing our faces, and we can get to see yours, please do go out to our website, wintradio.com. It gives you the link, and you're very easily from anywhere in the world to join us live as part of our Zoom connection. If not, we love having you also on the internet stream, and of course in the Northeast Ohio area at WINT Radio. During the break, we did have some good comments, not as many as we wanted to in the short period of time, Ratanjit, about digging deeper into this. And I think one of the observations that was made is that most people look at COVID as being restrictive at the physical level, and how it changed us in ways like having to wear masks and having to work from home and physical things. But what we're trying to do today is explore more meaningful, more deeper elements of how this has touched us and changed our lives, and hopefully to use this to propel us forward for whatever years we have left. If you're a youngster, you got maybe 80 years to evolve because of this. And even if you're in your later years, like we are, next 10, 20, 30 years, we can still make a difference. So let's go to that. If this has caused us to become more aware of the oneness in the world and the fact that we have brothers and sisters around the world who are exactly like us, and if we realize that we can't make our decisions just based on our physical human traits, but on this deeper oneness traits, how can we convert that into meaningful life changes, meaningful things that we approach differently and act on differently than we did before?
Well, see, Ray, somebody has to make us aware of the kind of talk we are having on the show, that why we react the way we react, why many people have become negative and many people have become positive. So why is the difference? And there is another element we all must contend with, that the real boss, which is running our show, is not our knowledge or wisdom or intelligence. The real boss is our habits. And if you are living right from beginning under the habit of, addiction can be many kind. One of the addiction is ego addiction. Other addiction is a fear addiction, greed addiction. So under those, if you have developed habits, so that is how you look at things under any circumstances. Nature gives us bumps in life to wake us up. But if we cannot see the reality even under those conditions, and again go back to controlled by our habit, if we are enslaved by our habits to an extent that we cannot shake them, then we go back to the same thing. And that is why 9/11, after 9/11, people went back to the same thing. And I can assure you, after everything become normal, people will forget COVID. They will back to that greed and fear and ego mode, because that is how people have developed their habit of living in. They have.
I agree with you on that, but I was intrigued by what you just talked about with addiction, because we talk about drug addictions and alcohol addictions and addictions to pornography, different types of addictions like that we really do recognize. But I've never heard anybody say we have an addiction of fear or we have an addiction to greed. And that's really an interesting take on those. And you're right. I've just never really thought of it that way. What is that an addiction based on our habits? To go back to that, or is that something also that's human within us that we almost enjoy, just like we almost enjoy having that drink that we shouldn't have, that cocktail we shouldn't have, or the cigarette that we shouldn't have? Do we almost enjoy having that fear somehow?
See, there is a part of our brain, Ray, which is very creative and think of new things. But there is a part of our brain which is a gift to us. What that brain does is, whatever we do many times, whatever we think many times, it locks it. So it automatically puts you in that mode if you are not thinking. That is why all these brilliant people with all the knowledge in the world, you find them doing some amazingly atrocious, stupid things, because this habit is part of your brain, and that you don't even control. Whatever happens through you, sometimes you don't even know. Look at the driving we do and things we do. Sometimes we are eating food without knowing that I'm eating. So once you are operated by a habit mode, all your intelligence, all your knowledge, all your creativity sits aside. It's not being utilized. You are being run by your habits.
And you are, again, totally right. But you've taken that to the next level when you've introduced the idea of an addiction to fear or an addiction to greed. I mean, that now, those, and there's many other examples that we could give, those inside of us we know are not good. We know that we're not supposed to, being addicted to fear is not a healthy way of living. Being addicted to ego is not something that at our conscience level we want us to be addicted to having an ego. And yet you seem to mention that those are possible addictions, just like a physical addiction to alcohol. Do you really believe that? Or do we have that same type of a likelihood to fall into the trap of living in fear, living
Yes,
with an
yes.
addiction to fear?
Yeah, absolutely. There are people who spend their entire life in fear. There are people who are, afraid of certain things, and if you bring that, it paralyzes them. And again, these things give you a sensation, just like drugs and all these alcohol and all that. So, alcohol or cigarette, when you start, you cannot believe that somebody get addicted. They're horrible. But look at the thing which tastes so horrible. How can somebody get addicted to that?
Well,
The same thing
there's
is
a chemical. There's a chemical element there, okay, that they've proven, and even
yeah, but see, it's the same chemical element because there are all these hormones and are produced in your body when you are under fear or when you are ego. So you like that. So that is also, it can be explained as a chemical addiction. So it is, it depends on who you ask. If you ask a psychiatrist, he'll give you a psychological explanation. If you ask a chemist, he'll give you a chemical explanation. If you ask a spiritual guy, he gives you a spiritual explanation. So they can be explained in several ways, but fundamentally they are addictions.
It's an interesting exploration of those words, because I'm always trying to make myself better and help other people to be better. And if we understand that there is an addiction to that, just like we do acknowledge an addiction to drugs, okay, we do know that people that are addicted to drugs, they know they want to change. They really make every effort, but so often they fall back into that trap. If we know that about our addiction to our bad habits, and I don't mean bad habits in a negative way, but habits that we wish we didn't have, I think that changes our approach, because I think we feel we understand now why we do gravitate to them, and maybe it actually helps us to overcome them, because we can think of it in a way of saying, okay, just like I had to give up alcohol because I know that was not good for me, I have to give up this habit, this addiction to fear, of being afraid of everybody, afraid to do anything, of going anywhere. And maybe it takes it to a different level of understanding so that we can overcome it.
But see, Ray, there are two situations. There are some people who have strong will. Somehow they can see an addiction, and there are people who quit smoking cold and never go back to it because they had the will to do that. And then there are people who need professional help to help them do the same thing. So
Mhm.
similarly, we will find people in that category when somebody listens to a show like this and say, oh my God, I have to be aware of me, the real me, the power which enlivens me. I have to think through that power, and automatically my addiction to my fear, my greed, my ego will go away, because it is only available to me when I think in the human body mode. So once that understood, and there are people who can benefit and go there. But then there are people who would require a hand holding so they can go through a certain system. So breaking a habit, it takes either a strong will or some help to help you break that habit, but it can be done. We should all take inventory of our habits, and we never do that. And we say, "Oh no, I'm good. This is just when something bad we do, we blame it to, oh, this is a bad habit I have, but I'm a good person."
Right.
But you
Right.
are really what your habits are.
Well, and again, that's why I'm pounding on this idea of addiction, is that the first thing that they say for an addict is that they have to admit that they are an addict.
Right.
Okay. And so just this way, I mean, I know people may say you're crazy, right? You're saying ego is an addiction, but you've offered that idea. If it is, then the first thing we have to admit is to say, yes, I do have an ego. And yes, I want to change from always thinking what's in it for me, always thinking of myself first before I say or do anything.
So Ray, the one correction, I don't have ego. Ego is a reflection of the mode you are in. In the human body mode, there is no human being who will not have ego. They show that ego in different manners. Sometimes the ego shows up at humbleness, but it is all about me. So if you are operating in the human body mode, it is not about you being bad person or good person. You are going to have these things. You're going to have fear. You're going to have greed. You're going to have ego. You're going to have uncertainties. So until we learn to migrate into, see, our brain, it depends on who is guiding the brain. Brain is a very creative instrument. If your human body mode is guiding the brain, it say, yeah, I need this. It justifies it. But if the brain is attached to the real you, the power which enlivens you, which never dies, it cannot be hurt, it doesn't have to have ego. And all in that mode only, you will not have ego. It's the same comparison as darkness and light. You cannot fight darkness. It is merely absence of light. You cannot fight ego. It is merely absence of your awareness of who truly you are. You cannot fight fear. It is merely an absence of understanding who you are. So it is not about getting that addiction out of you. It automatically disappears once you are in the oneness mode.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if you've made it easier, though, to be able to try to overcome it. I mean, it's one thing then to say, okay, I admit that I have a big ego. All right. But I can't really fight it then. I can't really cure it. The only cure is to change my whole mindset to realize that I'm just part of a infinite oneness. So I'm So I'm doing a terrible job of of explaining this so that I can even understand myself, let alone you or anybody else. You just seem to you said it so beautifully, but it just seems to complicate how I overcome it. I mean, I have to do a complete change of understanding who I am in order not to have an ego.
Yeah, but see, if you are trying to solve the problem at the place where the problem was created, you cannot solve that. You have to move away from the, this is what Einstein said, is a definition of insanity. Because if your ego is coming through your human body mode, and you're trying to solve the problem in the human body mode, it is impossible to solve that. So what you can say is, I'm going to get rid of my ego. That itself is an ego. So you are going to see different shade and side of this ego, but you'll always be there. So the only way to get away from that is to have a realization, relearning of the fact that I am not the human body. Human body is a space suit given to me to conduct my journey. And ego is part of the human body. So you are going to fluctuate, you are going to migrate. Sometimes you are in the human body mode and sometimes in the spiritual mode. When ego, fear, all that is present, realize that you're operating in the human body mode. You have to migrate from human body mode to the spiritual mode. The power which enlivens you is what should guide your brain. And at that condition, you will not have any of these addictions or disease.
We are digging deep today on this edition of Stress Free Living, and I hope that you are enjoying the ride along with us. We have only a few minutes left. On the other side of this last break, we'll come back and see if we can put some bows on this whole topic and come up with the answer to the question, did COVID change everything or not? We'll find out when we come back, hopefully in just a few minutes. Please stay with us. All right, everybody, we've got 2 minutes there. Darby, if you want to start quickly, I know we shut you down, I'm sorry.
No, you didn't shut me down. I was just thinking about when Ratanjit was talking about the spiritual side and how that's important. And I'm listening to about these addictions, and I have something that I'm struggling with. But yeah, I think that we have to get out of this human mode in order to be able to move away from those things that we are struggling with. And I'm just kind of processing that now. So thank you.
Yes, so am I. Dr. Ghani?
If I've done anything, I've confused everybody.
Well, anybody else, Doctor? Anybody?
Dylan, you are quiet today. What
Yeah, I'm like Darby. I'm processing, and
Okay.
I think I'm probably more of the cynic in the room, which is ultimately I'm worried that we're going to go back into our habits, and that far too many people struggle to get out of the human body mode. So I'm looking for some practical advice coming out of this session as to what can I do to get into the spiritual mode.
Sounds good. We have probably 20 seconds left. Anyone else?
What about the 21 and then 90?
Say that again.
21-90, 21 days habit, 90 days it becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Ratanjit, I got that from you a while back.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe that's the practical answer. All right. Stay with us afterwards. We can talk some more. We're going back in the last segment. This is Stress Free Living. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Ray Samich and Ratanjit Sandhi, along with our Zoom audience that we interact with during the breaks, and we are so grateful for them, as well as for all of you joining us on the show every week. And by the way, they're all out there on our YouTube channel as well. If you want to look for Stress Free Living on YouTube, you can go back and watch and listen to many of our prior shows. We're putting them all up after we record each one of these weekly programs. Ratanjit, so we only have a few minutes left, and we truly have diverted a little bit from the original idea of the show, as is so often what happens. So in the last few minutes that we have left, if we've really come down to saying one of the things that hasn't changed is that we need to be more in the spiritual mode of life, that whether their interruptions are huge like COVID, that seem to be generational changing of everything, or whether they're just, relatively small things that happen just to us. We lose a job, or we lose a relationship, something that only happens to one person out of the billions of people that live in society. The best way it seems to handle those things is in a spiritual mode, not if we are in a human mode of fear and greed and ego. So how do we transition? How do we start saying, here's one good thing coming out of COVID. I'm going to change my habits. I'm going to change the way I live, the way I act. What would you suggest?
Well, see, the thing is to have life is a gift. To enjoy this gift to its fullest, we have to stop interfering what it is designed to do through our ego, fear, greed mode. So once you accept that, okay, I realize that I'm enslaved by these things. I want to get out of this. I want to have the fullest capacity of this enjoyment of this human experience. So if you have, once you made a decision that, yes, I want to get there. But if you have not made a decision, you are still in the confusion state and say, yeah, this is a theory and this is fine and I'm fine, then you are going to be subjected to the addiction of fear, greed, and ego. So it's bumps like these make you realize that I have to get out of this. So now the question is, once you have decided, okay, I want to change, I want to connect to the power which enlivens me. I want my brain to be guided by the universal power which is present in me and everyone else. Once that decision is made, then I can give you habit-forming exercises. And this exercises, this whole movement requires initially to connect to the power within you. You have to be in the mindset of utter, unconditional gratefulness. Or religion tell us, the world tell us, our parents tell us, be grateful, be grateful. But then they give us a list why we should be grateful for. I'm grateful for this beautiful home. I'm grateful for the food I've given. I'm grateful. So I'm still in the greed mode. I'm still counting things. You are not grateful. If nothing is there in front of you to be grateful for, what are you grateful for? So unconditional gratefulness until is imparted upon, you cannot connect to the power which is present within you. You cannot migrate from human body mode to the oneness mode. So first exercise is that, again, habit forming exercises is that if we do certain things 30 times, 40 times, depends on, I would recommend to do this exercise forever. Because we go back very quickly to the other habits. So the exercise I'm recommending is this. First thing in the morning, when you're fully awake, had your shower and alerted your body. So after getting ready, stand in front of a mirror. And what you see is the reflection of this human body. An amazing tool which is gifted to you. You haven't earned it. All these things this human body does, without your knowledge, it creates blood and energy from the food you eat. Many times you eat junk food. It neutralizes the poison brought in by your habits. So amazing, this human body. And it is gifted to you. And how do you know that gift is there? By breathing. When you breathe, you see this human body is still there with you, alive. So with every breath you take, you must be utterly grateful. So once you are in that mode, you do this exercise for a whole month. And then after that, go to the second exercise attached to the same exercise, which is now after being in the grateful mode, when you look into your eyes, you see life present in you. And that life is an indicator of the divine force enlivening this human body. Without that enlivening force, this human body would be dead. You cannot even keep it. So, what brings life in you is the power which enlivens you. So, you bow to the power, and you now, when you begin to go in the world, you see somebody else, a person, you look in their eyes, you see the same power enlivening them. You bow to that person, to the power. So now you have an incentive to make a difference. You have an incentive, egoless, because ego goes away in the presence of gratefulness. You have utter gratefulness, and you are now guiding your brain with the enlivening power. So, this exercise, as you do more and more, you will migrate into oneness mode, and you begin to operate your brain through the enlivening power. With the guidance of enlivening power, it becomes tremendously creative, and it gives you an avenue to add the highest value unconditionally, and which as a consequence gives you amazing feeling of inner gratification, inner satisfaction, which otherwise is not available to you. You become whole. This exercise, as you do more and more, you will migrate into oneness mode, and you begin to operate your brain through the enlivening power. With the guidance of enlivening power, it becomes tremendously creative, and it gives you an avenue to add the highest value unconditionally, and which as a consequence gives you amazing feeling of inner gratification, inner satisfaction, which otherwise is not available to you. You become whole, you become complete.
I know that you said we should do that every day for the rest of our lives, and I don't disagree. But initially, for somebody who's hearing this as a possible solution, as a way of doing this, how long do you really think it would take for that to become a habit? Is that the old 21-day mentality that says if I do that for 3 weeks, I really will start believing it? I really will start, it'll start changing who I am?
See, first week, it's going to be a burden. You say, this is nonsense. You're not going to begin to see the real impact of this exercise for 25, 26 days. And then from that onwards, if you continue to do for another 30 days, it'll become a habit.
I do think, though, because I've done that at your suggestion, and it's a overwhelming feeling. I mean, it is a real fulfilling feeling that you get from that process right away. So I think your body will, and your mind will say, I don't mind doing this. This is a good habit to form. I was just curious to see, because I haven't, unfortunately, kept it up. And so it hasn't become the habit that I needed to become. Ratanjit, we are out of time. Again, for our audience, we've really changed the topic here over the course of the show, but I think we've eventually come back and answered that question. I think the one big thing that didn't change among COVID is the need for us to be aware of who we really are and who that inner power is within us. That's the same one that's within all of us, and how we have to try to reach down and allow that to come through. And that will change our lives and our world if we can somehow do that, make that a habit. Ratanjit, thank you so very, very much for sharing your love and your wisdom, your thoughts with us again today. And to our Zoom audience, we appreciate you being there. And to our overall audience, we appreciate you definitely as well. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. We'll talk with you again real soon.
Thank you.